So, what I'm talking about today was actually something requested by a group in Lama Tsongkhapa Institute in Italy. And they're they want stories from some of the older students who went to Kopan, who were Lama and Rinpoche's students, now that Lama and Rinpoche are no longer alive. And so they're collecting stories and ideas and things. So that's what I'm talking about today. Yeah. So, first of all, for Lama, just some of the things that the question was, what do I think that Lama wanted Westerners to know about the Dharma? You know, what besides just the Dharma content, you know, he wanted everybody to know everything, but what kind of things did he emphasize? So one thing was not judging people. Yeah, because the topic would come up quite often about if people would ask Lama, well, what do you think about Hitler? You know, you're always talking about compassion for all sentient beings, but what about Hitler? What about Mao? What about Stalin? What about fill in the blank? And Lama, you know, he would often tell the story there of how he fled Tibet as a refugee in 1959 when there was an abortive uprising against the occupation of the communist Chinese. And so he was part of the monks from Sarah J. When the turbulence started, they went into the mountains, but when they soon heard that His Holiness Dalai Lama had fled, then all the monks also fled, and they crossed the Himalayas and went to Buksa, which was the old British POW camp. And because Nehru, you know, gave them the Tibetan refugees land in different parts, you know. So they went there. And that's, I think, where Lama Zopa started studying with Lama Yeshe. Yeah. Later, when they both came to Tibet, they were teaching together, you know, but in very different styles. But Lama, you know, when he talked about compassion for all beings, and the question came up about Mao, he would put his hands together like this, and he said, you know, if I had just remained in Tibet, I probably would have become very complacent, gotten my Geshe degree, gone back to my village. People would come and make offerings, and I'd do pujas for them. But he said, I never would have probably really gotten the whole point of Dharma practice. And here's where he said, I have to thank Mao Zedong for that. Yeah, because I became a refugee, and when I became a refugee and everything I had was lost, because when they fled from the Tibetan mountains into India, most of the Sera monks just had their bowl with them. They always took their bowl anyway. But they couldn't take, you know, clothes and books and anything. They just had to go. And he said, Lama would say, you know, it's thanks to Mao I became a refugee. And then I really had to practice the Dharma. Yeah, because it was only through the Dharma practice that he was able to find meaning in what he was doing and also keep a positive attitude. So this is something that he really emphasized to us. Yeah, whenever we wanted to put people in, you know, that's a bad person, that's an evil person, these people should be, you know, gotten rid of, they're, you know, they're worms, they're vermin, whatever. He would say, no, you know, that they're objects of our compassion and we should respect them Why? They have the Buddha nature. Yeah. Someday these beings, these people will become Buddhas. So you can criticize the actions that people do, but you can't say the person is evil or hopeless or anything like that. So he really hammered that in about not judging people, and also about appreciating everybody's qualities. Yeah, that was something too that you would see. Yeah, he could find something good in everybody. He had an interesting way of responding to people's questions because, he had all the young Westerners, we were called Ingies, and, kind of up from Freak Street, half stoned, half unstoned, and would ask Lama some question, about who knows what, Lama, what do you think about the chakras? Is there a chakra in my ear here? Is there a chakra in my ear there? Oh, what do you think about, this kind of food and that kind of medicine and all these things? And when people would ask questions, they tended to give a whole sermon of giving Lama all of their ideas about the way they think things are. And sometimes their little speech would end with a question, and sometimes it was just up to Lama to figure out what in the world they were asking. Yeah, it was very interesting. But what he would say, even when somebody was talking something that seemed to me anyway, and I think some of the people who had been around, like nonsense, Lama would find one word in what they were saying and take that word and then go off and talk about that. Yeah. So if somebody said, well, what about chakras in your ears? I'm just making this up. I don't think there are any, but, somebody said, what did you have chakras in your ears? Lama would say, oh, hearing. Hearing is very, very important. In fact, that's the first thing we have to do in learning the Dharma. There's 3 things. We hear the teachings and study them. Then we think about them. Then we meditate on them. So hearing, very important. You should try and hear as many teachings as you can. Yeah? And the person, even though they wanted to know about chakras in your ears, they were satisfied with what Lama said. It was amazing to see this. Okay, so I learned something about that. He also really taught us how to laugh at ourselves. And he would make fun of us and, pick out our silly habits, our very samsaric, stupid way of thinking, and make jokes about it and make us laugh at ourselves. And so this too, looking back, I think was a big influence on me because I learned I had to laugh at myself and not take myself so seriously, and because at the beginning we were all very enthusiastic. We wanted to attain awakening, instantaneously in 3 weeks by the end of the meditation course. And that was the longest. Next Wednesday was the shortest. But we really we were pushing. And what did Lama do? Yeah, he sent us mostly off to work. Yeah, because when you push in your Dharma practice, you get what is called lung, because you get tight. I gotta get this meditation topic down right. Yeah, and yeah, that just doesn't work as a way to practice the Dharma. So he saw that even though we were very enthusiastic and very idealistic about the Dharma, and this business about attaining awakening in one life, but wow, we wanted to go for that, yeah. And then he would send us out to work. So I remember one of the monks who was leading meditations when I first came. He got sent to open an import-export business in Kathmandu to get Tibetan handicrafts, take them to the West, and in that way earn some money for the monastery. Because they were refugees, they were desperate for money. So he was sent off there. I was sent off to Italy. Venerable Sangha Kadra was sent off to Manjushri Institute in UK. A couple of people were sent to Chenrezig Institute in Australia. So we were, I was a baby nun, and I was sent off, to be the spiritual coordinator for Dharma Center. And, I didn't know anything. But that didn't matter. You knew something. That was more than other people. So you just went there and did the job, whatever job it was, as best as you can. And since the centers were all new, a lot of times it was physical work that you had to do. At the center in Italy was an old, I guess you would say it was bigger than a mansion. It was like in France it was a chalet. Chateau, a chateau. So something comparable in Italy. So, there was construction going on all the time, and, trying to create a library and organize a program and just get enough dishes for the kitchen so everybody could eat. It was really scratch from the beginning. And his whole idea in sending us off to do that is we need to create merit. Yeah, that our enthusiasm to sit down, meditate, gain realizations by Wednesday at the soonest, 3 weeks at the longest, we didn't have the merit to do that. And how do you accumulate merit? Well, there's particular Dharma practices you do, Vajrasattva and 35 Buddhas and mandala offerings and all these kinds of things. But, you have to offer service to the Dharma. And so helping to create, there weren't monasteries in the early days, in the West anyway, but helping to create Dharma centers. Working at Kopan, which was a monastery. So digging ditches, helping to carry go shopping in town, and then bring the groceries back up. Lots and lots of physical things to create merit by serving the Triple Gem and serving the Sangha. So that also was a very skillful way for taking a bunch of young people with a lot of energy who couldn't really sit still and meditate for a long time to really put their energy in a good way and create merit. Okay. He also though he taught us to laugh at ourselves, he took monastic life very seriously. And he wanted people to be really serious about being ordained. And since Kopan didn't have any finances, let alone for the young boys at the school, they didn't have anything for the Westerners. So when people requested to ordain, very often they got sent back to their own country to work for a year and earn some money and then come back. And I think he saw that as a way of really seeing if people were serious about ordaining. Yeah, because it was easy to just fall in love with, Tibetan Buddhism is, Shangri-La and mystical, magical, all this kind of stuff, and he didn't want monastics that were into that, because keeping the precepts is a serious thing. Yeah. We didn't really have many teachings on the Vinaya, yeah, but he always talked about being a good visualization for the lay people, okay? Because, and this comes because this is how the precepts were made at the time of the Buddha, is somebody would do something and then well, sometimes it was the Buddha who found what that person did distasteful. Sometimes it was other monastics, but very often it was lay people who complained about the way monastics did something. And the complaint reached the Buddha, and the Buddha would set down a precept. Yeah, so that's the foundation of, presenting a good visualization. Yeah. Of course, we didn't really have a very good understanding of what a good visualization was. Yeah. So there were some things that were not so good that some people did. But he kept saying, you have to have a good visualization. In other words, you can't bring in your lay habits and your lay ways of doing things, and no going down to Freak Street anymore, and the precept about intoxicants really meant no intoxicants. Yeah, so be serious about that. And because that can really affect the belief of the lay people, if they have faith in the Sangha or they don't have faith in the Sangha. And that's up to how the Sangha behaves. Yeah. Okay. He also, Lama had this incredible ability to just hear whatever people said and not get angry about it. And so there was one time when he wanted to translate some parts of a Maitreya text that he was going to teach us. And Lama did not speak great English. Yeah. But you learn to kind of understand what he wanted, even though the grammar and the pronunciation were interesting. Yeah. But I remember we were sitting in his room and he was translating things and I was the scribe writing things down. And it seemed like every 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most, somebody would come in with a question for Lama. And it wasn't just a simple question, it was often, did we have a truck at that time? I don't think we even had a truck. But, something broke, the well broke. Lama, what do we do? How do we fix it? And he would give an answer, yeah, and then, he'd go back to work. And then 10 minutes later, somebody else would come in and say, Lama, this person is doing this and that, and it's totally crazy and doesn't make any sense. And Lama would say, okay, do this, this, this. That person would leave. He would go back to what he was doing. And so all these people would come in and, ask him dozens of questions, complain about this person or that person. And I just watched him. He would deal with somebody and then go back to what he was doing. And so all this stuff that got dumped on him, what to me, what it was like is like water off a duck's back. Yeah, when you put water on the water doesn't stick on the duck's back; it slides off, and so whatever problem or obnoxious thing was going on, it didn't bother him after he dealt with it. He didn't ruminate. It was water off of the duck's back. He also was very strong about emphasizing that enjoying things is not the problem, that Buddhism doesn't mean being an ascetic and only eating, 1 grain of rice a day for the rest of your life, like the Buddha did for 6 years. He said there's nothing wrong with enjoying, but the attachment is the problem. Yeah. And then the question comes, at our level, to what extent can we enjoy things without becoming attached to them? Yeah. When you eat some chocolate, he always used chocolate as the code word for object of enjoyment. It could be anything that you were attached to and liked. And he said, when you have one piece of chocolate, are you satisfied? Or do you want more? Yeah. Do you want better chocolate? Yeah. And so he'd say, yes, enjoy what you have, but when it's over, don't cling. And of course, that is much easier said than done. Yeah. But he really emphasized that. Yeah. No ascetic trips. And I saw him one time. He would go and check our rooms and see what was going on in our rooms and how they were laid out and so on. And he went into the room of one monk. And the rooms, we were in the building that belonged to the old astrologer. I never met him, but it was a brick building. So the floor was brick. It was really cold. And this monk had a very, very thin straw mat on top of that. And then, his sleeping bag. And Lama went in there and he looked and he said, "What are you doing? Get a mattress." Of course, the mattresses were only about this thick, but they were foam, He said, "Stop going on a Milarepa trip." Yeah, he would always say, "You guys, you just go on Milarepa trips thinking that you're going to be holy. No, you got to take care of your health. Take care of your body. Yeah, don't pamper it, but, yeah." And this monk was like, okay, because he was really on a Milarepa trip. Yeah. Then he also, whatever he was teaching, he emphasized putting it in practice in your life. In other words, it's not just interesting information. It's not just intellectual information. Yeah. But whatever Dharma you learned, you should try and put it into practice. If something is too advanced for you, yeah, just put it on the back burner, but have respect for it and think, when I get to that stage, then I can practice that. But, both he and Rinpoche together really emphasized the Lam Rim teachings and the Lojong or mind training teachings. And they really pounded those into our heads. We needed it. Okay, so he would often talk about, you can become a great scholar and talk about 15 of that and 4 of this and blah, 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 give excellent, discourse, but your mind is a disaster. Yeah. He would say, no, it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. What you practice, what you learn, try and use it in your mind, in your daily life. Okay, so that's about Lama. I think I need another day to continue about Rinpoche. Is that okay? Maybe tomorrow? Okay. So, in the meantime, I'll probably think of more things